last 25 years. We are operating our international trucks from Pakistan to all the countries I mentioned now. In this 25-year experience, what we have learned operating our trucks across the borders, that I will say one saying is there in Pakistan and India, जिसकी लाठी उसकी भैंस. तो पाकिस्तान हो, इंडिया हो, ईरान हो, अफ़गानिस्तान हो, सेंट्रल एशिया हो, हर जगह की अपनी अपनी कुछ ना कुछ ऐसी प्रॉब्लम्स होती हैं जहाँ पर क्रॉस बॉर्डर ट्रेड को टैरिफ बैरियर्स और नॉन टैरिफ बैरियर्स और NTMs सबके थ्रू रोका जाता है. अब पाकिस्तान और इंडिया के दरमियान अगर ट्रेड को बढ़ाना है तो लाठी तो गवर्नमेंट के हाथ में होती है. हम तो एज ए सर्विस प्रोवाइडर, एज ए इंडस्ट्रियलिस्ट, एज ए ट्रेडर, व्हाट वी कैन डू if the whole of the government approach for enhancement of the trade is not existing. We can talk, we can decide, make the mayors, make the standards to operate the trade or services. We can do everything. Whenever there is a trade, before that trade, every importer or exporter knows that what laws, what rules and regulation he or she has to fulfill. Otherwise they cannot trade. When these all laws and rules and regulations are existing in India and Pakistan, so who is stopping the trade? वो जिसके हाथ में लाठी होती है. This is my views on trade.
Thank you. Okay, so I would now like to ask the panel, you have 60 seconds each, please, if you to respond to anything that you would like to or make any closing remarks. So I would like to maybe start from this side. Vishwanath?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, although people asked the question first, Nisha, I wanted to thank you because this India Trade Portal which you're talking about is something we have set up for the Ministry of Commerce, and that's the reason I said I'm struggling to put the 8-digit level. We have actually put ATMs on the basis of an 8-digit level, and we're working on it. We are tracking about 30 countries there, so it'll be good to get a feedback in terms of how it looks and what it says. So where we are now trying to look at how could we seriously, so all these countries and where we are, and including India's things are there. I've used 20 seconds of mine, 40 more seconds. To just answer Bipul's thing, Bipul, my whole thing was that I didn't say that it should not be done bilaterally. My whole thought was that if we can look at international standards and on the basis of those international standards start looking at where are we in terms of NTMs, instead of saying that this is a problem for me, and start saying if it is something which is also being looked at by the domestic industry and it is also mattering to the industry on the other side, then we can look at maybe changing it. But the fact is just complaining about it is not going to work. So I think either we meet with those standards, like if there is a Euro 4 which the Indian cars have to meet to export to Europe, you have to meet that standard. You cannot certainly say that I cannot meet the standard. So I only said that we need to get back and see where are those standards lying and what is it that we can seriously look at. Thank you so much.
Mr. Sehgal has pointed out a very important point, which is human resource. I think on both sides there's a lot of training is required as far as the handling of the export or import cargo is concerned. There are various agencies involved, and I know it for a fact that most of them are not trained in this respect. Because it's an issue of behavior and attitude towards the trade. So I think this needs to have a greater focus from both the governments.
I'll be very short. There's been mention of securities establishments across the two countries and politics always trumping trade. Looking at security establishment across the border, our country, it has a fairly huge economic footprint. And it would be in its interest, one would imagine, that the size of the economic pie increases because its share of the economic pie would also, by that logic, increase. And trade is going to result in that size of that economic pie to increase. So I think if better sense prevails, for the economic growth and prosperity of the country, so even the security establishment on the other side should see the benefit of trade between India and Pakistan. So hopefully this politics constantly trumping economics should not be the case.
Just 2 points. One is Nisha. Thank you. I think it's very useful comments. But in our book, in the database it created, actually, we also mention about the legislating authority and the legislation for each of the NTMs. So, but definitely there needs to be further work needs to be done, especially on the domestic issues. How do you kind of link the NTMs and the domestic constraints? I think this is very important. Very final comment on the political will. This morning we heard from Mr. Joint Secretary that probably that will is not that very important, rather than actually, trade is happening and then other issues are important. I just give you one example. Take the example of India's unilateral decision to give LDCs to reducing the sensitive list quite significantly. And I heard from my Indian friends that actually there was lobbies against within India not to give. But it was a political decision by the political leaders that they wanted to go ahead with this. So I really want these kind of political decisions or that kind of leadership in India and other South Asian countries also to have this bold decision to carry this agenda forward. Thank you.
I just have one comment on the standardization at the 8-digit level. Because after 6 digits, the products do not match between countries. So there is need to harmonize at the 8-digit level before you can come to a standardization at that level. And the second point I think is that South Asian countries must be represented well in the international standard setting bodies. Otherwise, they'll be isolated. They can think of regional standards as well, which may not be international standards, but they are acceptable according to local conditions of the region. So they should be represented well in the international standard setting bodies.
Thank you. This morning, Akbar Zaidi talked about Mumbai and Karachi. I'm making general comments. Actually, we want a nexus, trade nexus between Gujarat, Rajasthan and Singh. And that is why we have been advocating the Monabao Khokra Par road. Because Monabao Khokra Par is essential if Pakistan-Indian trade has to increase, because at the same time we want to get out of the militaristic mindset of the north and shift it to the mercantile pragmatism of Mumbai and Karachi. The second point is, what we are trying to do is that we have to be very forceful to wag the dog now, because the snakes and ladders game is getting us nowhere. And we businessmen have the 4 C's in mind. It's continuity, consistency, we are very committed, it's commitment, and we are the ones who really have the courage. The business committee has the courage to do it. And others, when they get the politicians, the bureaucracy, so-called sensitive establishments, if they also toe our line, the things would be a lot better and peace would really come in the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Majid sir. So I will not attempt to do any sum up. I think you had a very rich discussion, but I will just highlight a few points which I think also would be useful to ICRIER as it moves forward along with its partners to think about, keep in mind when this area about NTBs, NTMs, which is kind of which gets lost very often in terms of very often people are talking about different things when they discuss NTMs, NTBs, and I think this session hopefully has been useful in clarifying some of that that kind of debate. So, as we said, all countries legitimately have NTMs for protection, for consumer protection, and standard enforcement. When does it become an NTB is the question that we are trying to debate. And there is, as Tora pointed out, there is a lot of issues with information flows itself. Very often, just a lack of information on what are the standards in your receiving country, in an importing country, is what is then perceived as an NTB, when it is actually not. It is merely an NTM. It is a measure that is legitimately imposed by every importing country. Right? Now, then the question comes about the systems of validation for exporters, certification, conformity assessment, how does the importing country, how does it accept from the exporting country all the certification, the testing, so there is an element of cooperation there that is needed between every bilateral pair of countries, or you have some international certification bodies that is certify those products. So then it comes to also bilaterally you can have mutual recognition agreements to ease that process of trade flow between countries, and I think that's an area where India-Pakistan could work more closely together. Then the other point, which I think was getting into the realms of problem solving, Salim mentioned and Zubair Saab mentioned, is that yes, we need to start getting into the realm of dispute resolution. Can we make it a regular event? Every 3 months, every 6 months, can official bodies sit together with the private sector in a public-private dialogue kind of space and then sort these issues out right from the horse's mouth? When the officials are sitting there, those who can actually decide on the spot, yes, this is legitimate, this is not. This is our own NTM, but this is a fair critique of an NTP. Yes, we can make that decision right now on the spot. And I think there are officials on both sides. If we present it in that very constructive way, there are officials on both sides. If we kind of make this a regular system, they will make it work. And I think it just needs to be this kind of a concrete proposal if it comes up, and I think it can be made to work with all the goodwill that is prevalent in this room. The NTM desk in all SAARC countries is a very good start, and they can inform this kind of dialogue that can happen. Of course, friends talked about broader issues, visa regimes, trade facilitation, all of that, which in some sense go beyond the realm of trade of NTBs as such, because they're much bigger. And of course, those need to be solved for any kind of contact. You need visa regime and trade facilitation, etc. to happen. And that can also happen, but those are political processes. And the final thing I would like to say, trade facilitation, not political, certainly the visa regime part is, the issue of raising political awareness, and that Salim mentioned how I think it was Dr. Manmohan Singh actually who pushed forward the idea of giving all LDCs in South Asia the idea of duty-free, quota-free access, and it was over and above all the arguments put forward by all the bureaucrats and all the business lobbies in the country. He said, I am going to provide a duty-free, quota-free status as of, after the Malay summit, it was announced. And it was a, unilateral decision as by a statesman to do that. And I think but how do you create, that's fortuitous or not, but how can we create that space where such decisions are taken as a result of events like this, creating the evidence base, doing the public-private dialogue. So ultimately there is so much public pressure that even the higher-ups and the decision makers are in some sense forced to take decisions in the interest of broader trade relations. So ladies and gentlemen, I think you'd agree with me. You had a very rich session. Can you join me in a round of applause for the panel?
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll straight away start with our next session on energy cooperation. This session will be chaired by Dr. Surjit Bharra. Can I please have the speakers on the dais? The speakers are Narendra Taneja, Ish Kumar, Pradeep Mehta, Mahendra Lama, and Nityananda. Can I please have everybody on the dais?
You to sit down. They're not starting the session. Excuse me, friends. Just stop. Just stop.
So let's start with this session on the potential of engaging with each other in the area of energy. For many years,
and then at 7 p.m. there is one special session in the evening.
For many years, the discussion on trade with India, between India and Pakistan, has been restricted to trade in goods. And as we saw in today's session, we have covered the trade in goods from various angles. And the more we engage in discussion, the more we realize that there are other potential areas of engaging with each other economically, and energy is clearly one of those. So I very much look forward to the discussion on this topic. It's a little different from normal trade in goods, because in normal trade in goods we are really talking about countries' comparative advantage in trading with the other country. Here, if my memory serves me well, in 2005-06 I did a fair bit of work on India, and the power sector in India was not in great shape. I don't know, things may have changed since then, but certainly in Pakistan the power sector is in very bad shape. So it will be very interesting to see how two badly performing energy sectors can actually create possibilities of constructive engagement between these two countries. So I very much look forward to the discussion. We have an array of excellent speakers, and I will start with Mr. Narendra Daneja. He's the convener for BJP on a energy cell, an energy expert and commentator.
Well, thanks, Mr. Chairman. I, of course, follow India-Pakistan overall economic relationships in particular, but overall relationships very carefully. And when you look at the energy sector as a whole, whether in India or in Pakistan, it's very easy really to identify areas of cooperation. Also, above all, I think to reach to the conclusion, look, these countries should actually be cooperating and collaborating with each other more. Look at the size of energy sector in India. If you look at the size of energy sector in India, it's close to $500 billion. Here I'm talking about the business turnover and things of all major companies, both public sector and the private sector. Starting with Indian Oil, which has a turnover of $86 billion, and going to private sector companies, including among others, SR, Reliance, and Cairn Energy, and so on and so forth. At the same time, when we have that kind of size of the energy sector, we still have large number of people without electricity, without access to electricity. In India, there of course figures vary. Some people say 300 million, some say 400 million people without access to electricity. We have 700 million people who have yet to formally join the gas economy of the country. And similarly, if you look at energy poverty across South Asia, from Afghanistan to Bangladesh, and from Nepal to Sri Lanka, is quite widespread. And when you look at the energy poverty map of the world, you find actually there are roughly 1.7 billion people on the planet who actually are below energy poverty line. And many of them actually live in this part of the world, including India and Pakistan. But at the same time, my personal opinion is that if there is one sector that has potential to change India-Pakistan relationship, the landscape of relationship between India and Pakistan, economically, socially, and even politically, that sector is energy. For two reasons. First, just the sheer size of energy sector across the world is huge. Look at the size of the energy sector in India's economy, and I'm sure that in Pakistan is actually equally big. Second, people say that energy is 90% politics the world over. 90%. Whether it's oil. Can I have your attention, please, gentlemen? Can I have your attention, please? 90% is the same story. When you look at, for instance, many major wars fought, like since Second World War, almost 90% of the wars have been fought over energy, including Persian Gulf War I and the Persian Gulf War II. Therefore, look at India. Bulk of energy, 2/3 of our oil, for instance, come from the Middle East. 2/3. And if you look at it very carefully, there is a potential for us, for instance, to build a kind of, since we are so well connected, if we could go via Pakistan, if we could go via Iran, I think then we can build a completely new era in terms of relationship between India and the Middle East, which would involve, of course, Pakistan, Iran, and Afghanistan. So there is a potential, and this is nothing new that I'm saying, but there is a potential to build energy expressways to start with between India and Pakistan. At some stage when you come up with such idea, there are always people who are going to laugh at it. There are always people who are going to say, look, it's not workable, it's not feasible, and so on. But I personally feel that, look, the potential is there. You just look at, for instance, the amount of energy, natural gas that we import. If we could successfully build pipeline from Iran to India via Pakistan to transport gas, if we could successfully build a crude pipeline from Iran to India to carry crude oil, and similarly to carry hydrocarbon, oil or gas, to start with gas, from Turkmenistan to India via Afghanistan and Pakistan. There are two ways to look at this. One is that you just kind of construct just a pipeline and leave it there. The other way is to think a little bigger and actually think more in terms of an energy expressway. So, in the sense that you build this energy expressway, which will have, let's say a pipeline for gas, a product pipeline, because we can always export petroleum products like petrol and diesel to Pakistan, and crude pipeline, which can, for instance, be used, let's say, to import crude from countries like Iran. And similarly, the same expressway can also be used to build other kind of connectivity, such as broadband connectivity between India and Pakistan and Afghanistan, beyond, of course, our two countries. And if you look at it very carefully, so look at the potential I'm talking about. The potential is there. And this is a win-win for both the countries. It's a win-win for both the countries. In India, we are these days talking about bullet trains. A bullet train means that so that we can move from one city to another fast. If we are building an energy expressway, which would mean basically acquiring land, putting together some infrastructure there, and if we are prepared to think a little bit further, the same can also be used in order to build a kind of a train network. A bullet train between Delhi and Lahore, or a bullet train between Delhi and Islamabad, or Rawalpindi. Why not? And there are countries like China which are very keen to invest in India. Why can't they come and invest in such a project? Just to give you an example, so that India and Pakistan come actually closer. So, point I'm trying to drive home is that if there is one sector of the economy of South Asia that has the potential to firmly change the economic, social, cultural, political landscape between India and Pakistan, that sector is energy. Because in this sector there are players, they can easily influence public opinion. I'm not saying that for wrong reasons. If they want, they can influence the governments of the region. If they want, they can influence investor. And if they want, they can also influence diplomats and others. It's possible. The potential is there. And the point I'm trying to drive home is that feasibility reports are in place, and I don't know about Pakistani side, but I can share with you from the Indian side, as far as Indian side is concerned, companies and players are prepared. They are keen. They want these pipeline projects from Iran to India become a reality. They want TAPI or Turkmenistan to India pipeline become a reality. They want, for instance, the infrastructure so that electricity can move in both the direction. They want that to happen. So the will is there, direction is there, projects are there. All that we need to do is to build the right kind of atmosphere there. Now, having said that, at the same time, it is very important that we, when it comes to our energy policy involving Pakistan, or Pakistan energy policy involving India, or for that matter energy policy for South Asia, that we try to move in a way which is more forward looking. I'm of the opinion that if we have to build our Mongolia policy or Kenya policy or Latvia policy, probably we can do that sitting in the conference room or Ministry of External Affairs in New Delhi, or maybe in rooms like this. But when it comes to our Pakistan policy, it is important that we meet in such rooms and create the right vibes. And we have people in the Foreign Office, in the Commerce Ministry, Ministry of Finance, at the headquarters of the government of India, show the headquarters of the government of Pakistan, Islamabad, having the right attitude and approach. But at the same time, it is very important that we also have support from the people out in the street. I personally feel it is very important. And at the same time, I think it is important that we communicate. People in business, people in energy sector, people who are in other fields like universities, academics and all, that we communicate. We communicate with each other, also we communicate with the people and try to bring about the benefits that, for instance, for the sake of discussion, the energy sector alone has the potential to bring about. Just to conclude, if you ask me, am I very optimist? Am I going to see that happen anytime soon? Probably answer is yes and no. Probably more yes. Probably more yes. Maybe 75% yes, 25% no. Why I say yes? Because the energy today is the biggest challenge both in India and Pakistan. Just look at the last election in Pakistan. The biggest issue as far as Punjab was concerned, if I'm right, the BBC was reporting right, was actually Bijli, power. In India, election which is going on in Delhi, again electricity or Bijli is actually the big issue. It's a matter of time before you will see that people across Pakistan, people across India, people across Bangladesh are going to say, look, first and foremost, give us energy. And I think that means that would prepare the ground for politicians, for the public opinion to move forward, and above all for businessmen. And as I said, that energy companies, majority of energy companies, not only in India, not only in Pakistan, across the world are big. So it is very important that we convert that opportunity in terms of energy business into a tool that can be used to change the landscape between India and Pakistan, because I have this gut feeling, very gut feeling, that energy has potential. If there is one thing, trust me, if there is one thing that can potentially change the landscape of relationship between India and Pakistan, that is energy. It's not army generals. No, not even politicians. Trust me, if you study it more carefully, and I personally feel the time has come for us to move forward and invest in such ideas, because even if we succeed in building one gas pipeline between India and Turkmenistan, or India and Iran, along the way you will see townships will come up, power plants will come up, and there would be a constituency on both sides that would basically is going to help, for instance, the size of this room grow, which means there will be millions of people who would see the benefit of that if actually you come closer, what all you can do for yourself, what all you can do for your country, what all you can do for your economy. But having said that, it is important, the people who don't subscribe to such ideas, who don't actually are big stakeholder in terms of peace between India and Pakistan, they need to be checked. We just can't say that we can't check them, they need to be checked. It is important such people are not allowed free hand. It is important that such people are engaged internally in Pakistan. So therefore, I think looking forward,